Welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. Now, this is going to end up being my 100th episode, and for this, I wanted to
Wow.
do something different and special, which is why I'm dressed like a Sith Lord. Now, welcome back. Now, can you tell people, for people who might just be tuning in for this first time, who you are and what you do?
I'm Tim Craven. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was originally on this show to talk about the creative process of making records, which is what I do, one of the things that I do. And but since then, we've had some great conversations about so
So
many other
many other
things.
things.
So
Yeah.
here we are.
And we both are fans of the Star Wars genre, which is why I am
Oh,
dressed
yes.
in a phenomenally Sith. I got this one. This is my Sith costume, and I'm very proud of this. I scored this in Southeast
Great.
Asia. No
Awesome.
idea how I pulled that off. I had to dive through multiple layers of chaos to find a Sith costume. My daughter was like, "Daddy, I
Yeah.
want to be a Jedi, and you're going to be the bad guy." And I was like, am I bad, or am I
Mm.
simply the other side of the Force?
There you go.
Right,
That's right.
but like, one of the things is we were just talking about how life has been going, and I live in Southeast Asia, and it's been an interesting time because we just finished up Lunar New Year, and Lunar New Year, for people who don't understand, is something that's really different. It's not like New Year's. I just said it's like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's kind of rolled into one. There's
Hmm.
definitely a kind of a big mix of different things all involved at the same time. So it's this holiday that's this mixture of a lot of crazy stuff. But what's interesting, one of the reasons that it reminds me of Star Wars is so one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about Star Wars. So we're not just going down Star Wars, which is awesome. What I love about the new Mandalorian series is that there are these different, especially if you've seen the newest episode, and I won't say anything, but
No, I
there's some
haven't.
emerging trends, right? Because for the long time in Star Wars, there was the Jedi, there were the Sith, and then that was pretty much your two different paths. Granted, if you
Hmm.
followed the extended universe, there were tons of different things and groups, and you have your bounty hunters and different groups, but each different group has its own kind of code of life, and kind of like philosophy of life. And right now we're seeing in this most recent series the contrast between Jedi and Mandalorian. And this now people are like, yeah,
Mm.
Mandalorians are pretty cool. This is the way. Couldn't score a Mandalorian costume here. That was a bit beyond my
Right.
memory. But talk to me about what kind of drew you into Star Wars,
Oh, wow.
right?
Everything. I mean, what that came out in
75, yeah.
75, I think. And so it probably got to my neck of the woods. Like we had just moved from Los Angeles to St. Louis, and we landed, St. Louis is far at that time, things were different. They weren't as
Yeah.
instantaneous like they are with the internet. So it took a while for things to trickle from from Europe to the United States to the middle of the country. So, and things were different. Like LA had a scene and it was a whole thing, and New York had a scene and a whole thing. So all of that culture took a while to get to the center of the country, which is where now we were living. But so it came out in 75. I probably saw it in
Hmm.
76, and I was what? I think I was 5 or 6 at the time. So everything drew me in. It was a game changer. Like I'd been going to the movies. My parents were big movie fans, and they would always take us to the movies with them. And we saw leading up to Star Wars. We saw all the great ones. Like
Yeah.
Jaws, the big blockbuster, Close Encounter of the Third
Great
Kind,
movie.
which was great. We loved that. But man, Star Wars, it's something about it just clicked. I don't know if it's just all of the you know life the ways to live your life. It's like, that saying, everything I ever needed to learn, I learned in
Yeah.
kindergarten. It's like everything you need to learn in life, you can learn from watching Star Wars: A New Hope. I mean, it's
Right.
all there, all of the golden rule and all the things. And so I don't know if it was that, but it was definitely a combination of the visuals, it wasn't necessarily like at that age. I don't know good filmmaking from
Yeah, yeah,
bad
yeah,
filmmaking, and a lot of it, I guess, was kind of cheesy if you were an adult. But as a kid, it was
yeah.
just magic. It was absolute just magic from the moment the first, trumpet hits and the Star Wars logo drifts away from you to the very end ceremony, where they're giving the medals out, and it's just captivating. I think I saw it probably 10 times in the theater when I was a kid. It was like every weekend I'd be like, "Let's go see Star Wars," so my parents would take us. So everything about it was
I
amazing
remember the first
for me.
Force choke. The first time I saw the Force choke, and I was just like, "What? What? That's
Yeah,
possible?
I
Not
know.
in here, but in that
Yeah,
universe, it is." Like, oh my god! All my friends were just like,
yeah. Oh, I know. Just so much of that opening scene is just so captivating, and as a kid, and in 1976, we'd never seen the closest we'd seen anything to that was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That was the only thing with the spaceships and the big spaceships that come down at the end, and all of this stuff, and that's not even until the end of the
yeah,
movie. When you actually see the spaceships, everything is this illusion of light and shaking and chaos, and these aliens that are coming in and taking these people, and there's like this illusion of the spaceship. But that opening scene, the first thing is
right?
like right over your head. You've got the first spaceship that you think is really
Hmm.
grand. The little rebel, the little rebel ship, and then after it, that's shooting it is this like gigantic destroyer, Imperial destroyer. I mean, that's just like as a kid, are you kidding
Yeah,
me? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm in. I'm 100% in on this.
yeah.
It was jaw dropping
What?
for me. Then the
Yeah.
sound. I mean, that was like, they were really pushing new limits sonically in the theater with like early early surround
Hmm.
sound kind of components of that, and man, it was just all the lasers and everything, and it was just the music. It was nuts. It was insanity.
One of the things too that like you touched on it, like there's that first movie is a complete package because like they nail on the head. I mean, for a long time Hollywood's been really guided by Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. You know, this
Yeah, of
and it's
course.
an absolute
That's it.
epic thing, and it's there. You journey from the light into the dark. You have a loss. You meet the great. You journey from the known into the unknown, and then you meet the mystical helper, and then there's a death, and then this rebirth and resurgence, and that's the New Hope, man. And if
It's
it's all
all
there,
there.
and if you follow George Lucas, is he has this philosophy of I can't remember the exact thing, but there are these mirrors between the first the 4, 5, 6, New Hope,
Hmm.
Return of the Jedi, no, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the
Empire Strikes Back.
Jedi,
Yeah,
and then the
yeah.
prequel. Like even though the prequels, not everyone loves it. The 1, 2, 3.
No, I've got a story
Do
about
tell,
that.
do tell. But there's
I,
an interesting. He
I
has
got
these
a good
ways
one.
of like of his writing kind of mirrored everything, though. Tell me your prequel story.
Well, the first three are the thing for me because I was a kid, and yeah, toward Jedi, I was getting a little bit older, but the magic for me is in the
Yeah,
first one. It'll always be. I mean, I just watched it the other day with my son. Like, we both got COVID, just briefly. It was just like a couple days, but I got it, and then he got it, so we were quarantining in the bedroom, and he had a fever and he wasn't feeling well, and I was like, man, let's just put on some Disney Plus and just like let's just do it. Let's just watch all three Star Wars. Like let's do the thing. The
yeah,
first three, 4, 5, 6. So that's always been the one for me. That's the one that I always go back to. That's the one that is probably the most impact had the most impact on me. Just because as we journey into the 80s, 82, then I think what was it, 86 was Jedi. I'm now a teenager and I'm into rock and roll and Black Sabbath and smoking pot and all the things. And it's like, those things don't seem as magical to me anymore because I'm finding magic elsewhere. But man, I'll tell you what, that first Star Wars is a life changing experience for me. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. That is like low hyperbole in that
what what
statement.
what were some of the elements that really blew you away in the Star Wars?
I mean, I can't, I mean, all the characters, this character, this Darth Vader, like what? He's in a helmet, he's talking, he's not, it's like this, it's like there's no, you never see, his mouth never moves, but yet he's just so gripping. And, the droids like R2D2 and C3PO, it's like, what are these things? These are amazing. And then, Han Solo's character and, all of just Grand Moff Tarkin, this whole Imperial Senate thing. Like I was really into, and leading up to that, like my dad was a big war movie guy, like we used to go see like World War II movies, Guns of Navarone, Force 10 from Navarone, all of the things, Midway. Yeah. So, it doesn't escape you even as a kid that, the Imperial Guard is very, very World War II German kind of like, with their uniforms and stuff and their helmets that are kind of like, look like the old World War II helmets. So obviously bad guys and the good guys and this like Zen master kind of approach to things and this idea of this force and it's just really gripping even as a kid, even as a 6-year-old. It was really, maybe I couldn't put my finger on why, but just everything, like the way that the music played with the way that the characters were the way that they were. I love the fact that a lot of the actors were English, so the English accent really helped just kind of just give it like this stateliness to me. I mean, I don't know, I'm 6, right? It was just everything. The music was amazing. The sound effects were amazing. It really was a driving force in a lot of decision making as I got older as a kid, like things I wanted to get into. Like before I got really deep into working in music and producing records, I did a lot of sound design and film mixing. That was my first experience in audio engineering as I was in college and out of school. First 10 years of my career, I was a post-production mixer. Awesome. And was mixing 5.1 and doing sound design. And it was all driven because of Star Wars. It was all of the magic of Spielberg and George Lucas in the 70s and 80s that completely defined kind of who I was at the time.
I think people
if that answers the question.
People have a hard time understanding like the level of magic that Spielberg and Lucas brought in the 80s. I mean, think about all of the different things that they brought forward, from E.T. to Indiana Jones to, I mean, it's just mind-blowing, the stuff that they were bringing forward, and Star Wars was at the center of that,
Yeah. And the thing is they were really speaking to my age group at that time. I was Elliot. I was Elliot's age when E.T. came out. So, the magic in the film and the magic that he was feeling, I completely could feel that as well as a kid. And those films spoke to that. And I know that there's obviously an adult element to it, but I think, for a lot of adults, it wasn't the same as it was for people like kids that were my age, and like how much that meant, to them. Even Raiders of the Lost Ark, all of those things were just, Goonies.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was just all like, it's just one right after another. There's a sense of adventure and, and belonging and, this sense of like, defining yourself, finding your true self, like, all of those things that were really just, really, they touched me, they hit me. Yeah. They made a big difference and then shaped me as a child growing up into adolescence and becoming an adult. Like I still try to find that magic. It's harder as you get older to find that magic and to be in that place. And I really do. When I was working in film, the reason I was mixing and I really gravitated towards sound design, it was just that creative energy and that magic of like taking something that had no sound and creating this entire universe that was just from my head to the machine to out on film. That's awesome. And that's what to me was the magic of those films. Was I love watching the documentaries of how those films were made, how close they were to failing, and yet they were able to pull it from the brink of, failure. Like if you ever see the documentary on Spielberg making Jaws, it was like his first big studio film, and he insisted upon shooting on the water, not in a back lot. He insisted on being on location and just burning the budget. And everybody was like, the cast and crew was like in this small little town in like, Connecticut, and they're all just getting drunk all the time. And half the scenes with Robert Shaw, he's like half in the bag, and he's delivering these like incredible lines, and it's just magic. It's
Yeah.
magic. It's like those things that it's just like this ball of chaos that's about ready to fall apart, but it somehow just makes it through. And when you watch it back, when it's all said and done, and you watch it, it's like, damn,
Yeah.
it's just so good on so many levels.
Watch one of the things too that's special about these movies, and that and and the music and everything is, to me, through the scientific revolution, through all of mankind's advancement, we kind of killed our gods, our heroes, our demigods. And we took those legends, and mankind suddenly realized that they were legends. Thor is not necessarily real. There was Odin is not the All Father. Or whatever it might be. Mankind has kind of moved beyond mythos. But yet mythology is so important to the human psyche. These stories are so important to the formation of just our collective subconscious, that it's really interesting that our great archetypes are not necessarily these heroes of yore. They're not. We don't go and reference them. You could come to someone and go, hey, which character in Star Wars best represents your personality? You're like, well, I'm a little bit of Han Solo, or I might be more Boba Fett, or and people can kind of go in and they pull from a character, like which character aligns with you, and almost like which character do you model yourself upon, as well. Some people absolutely idolize Indiana Jones, and that was the person that they wanted to be. Indy was just this iconic character in the 80s. And so
Yeah. I mean, I find myself, it's funny getting back to Star Wars. It's like, I find myself constantly, even at 50, quoting that movie at different times in my life to address like a specific situation, like it's just amazing. Like just the little, just like the little quotes, like, the more you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. It's like, of course, that's the, it's like Lenny in, if you pet the rabbit too hard, you're going to crush it. The more you tighten your grip, so there's so much to be learned from that. There's just so many classic, like you said, mythological kind of lines that are in there. There's just so many great things. Like Han Solo, the reason I love his characters is because he's like a realist. He's like the realist. He's the guy that's like, hokey or ancient weapons and hokey religions are no match for a good blaster at your side. It's like, yes, I identify with that.
Right.
That's your daily reality check.
Right.
That's the world that we have to like wake up and brush our teeth and go into every day. But this idea that there's this like, force out there that's guiding us, is also really intriguing. And there's just so many quotable lines in there that I have like, lines about patience, about reciprocal behavior, like the golden rule, do unto others. It's just like little things like that. I just find them every day. It's just like little nuggets. It's just amazing. Like I bought this book that's basically the script of Star Wars. And it's like, you can just read it and it's just like it's Star Wars, the first one, New Hope. It's just like all the lines. Cause I'm constantly, most likely a spaceport, you'll never meet a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Like, when I was on tour, do you know how many times I would say that? I'd be like, Bowery Ballroom, you'll never meet a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. It's like, or whatever town we were rolling into,
That's awesome.
It's like, it's perfect. Those are like perfect little like things that you can just kind of, pull from on a daily basis. And that's to me what makes that movie so special. He just really just kind of nailed it, and my story is that
I'm looking forward to
as they released 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Like I was, so at the time those were released, I was working in film, and I was doing film mixing. So I was a heavy movie junkie. Like I had a 5.1 set up at my house, which was really unheard of at the time because it wasn't called 5.1, it was called AC3. I had a Laserdisc player, and I was deep in it. Like I was really into like the art of mixing film and sound design. So I was going to all the movies. So they released 1, 2, 3, and I waited to go see them. And if I'm not mistaken, I think at one point they re-released the old
Yeah,
Star
they
Wars, and you
released A
could
New
go
Hope,
see.
and so I
Yeah, so you could
yeah,
see. So you could go see one, two, three, four,
yep,
5, and
yep.
6, and I did that all in one
Oh my
day,
God, that's
and it was
awesome.
so funny. Yeah, it was like 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, it was like 10 hours. I was like there all day, and I got there when the theater opened, and I basically left when the theater closed. And I was like, I want the 10 a.m. Star Wars 1. I want the 11 o'clock Star Wars 2, 3, 4, like 4. And the guy at the box office looked at me like, you you got to get a life, dude. You've got to get a life, you know. And it's so I did that, and I just spent the entire day at the theater, and I watched all of them in a row, which was really really fun. But when the first one came out, I went to go see that by itself. The what is the first one called? Whatever, the Revenge of the Sith. I don't know, whatever
Yeah,
it is. Star
yeah,
Wars
yeah,
one, the first one, you know, where Anakin's a kid and he
yeah.
grows up and he becomes Darth Vader. That was so bad, in my opinion, that I actually sat in the theater. Like I paid for whatever, like the 2 o'clock matinee. It was so bad that I just sat there and I was like, nope, I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to sit here. They're going to clean the theater around me. I'm not leaving. And I'm going to watch this one more time because I refuse to believe that it was as bad as it was. And unfortunately, I watched it twice and it was confirmed that it was really bad. So, it was really bad. I was so disappointed. I mean, in my humble opinion, it was, not the greatest of the 6 films, but I was so shocked, and it was funny because I'm just sitting there, the lights are on. I'm like, no, I'm not moving. The guy comes by, he's like sweeping up the floors around me, and I'm like, I'm just hanging out. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. And I just couldn't believe it. I was so shocked, and it was really funny. But yeah, but I did watch all of them in a row, and it was fun.
Nice.
That was a really fun. And I just kept moving from theater to theater. It was like, it was like in theater 1, it was this, and then I'd get out and I'd go and I'd walk into 3, and then I'd come back to 2, and then I'd go over to 4, and it was like, it's really, people are just the people that work there were looking at me like, you sad human.
Well, it's interesting because each generation that we go through has their own thing, right? I think that the 70s and 80s were definitely the Star Wars generation. Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah.
But you moved into the 90s, and I don't think there was another one that really hit hard until Harry Potter came along. Late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And Harry Potter became this new...
Mhm.
Well, maybe you could say the Lord of the Rings were a definitely, it didn't hit as
Yeah,
heavy.
to me
The
though,
movies didn't hit as heavy as like Star Wars, but they were solid movies. But you didn't.
yeah, they were great. I mean, they were good franchise, but the thing is that book has been around
Yeah,
forever. So, Lord of the Rings wasn't anything. It wasn't like Star Wars when it came
no,
out. Star Wars was so just completely on the next
yeah,
level that it didn't. I mean, not only was it like this entire fantasy world, but all of these incredible characters. I mean, man, that bar
yeah,
scene
right,
when they walk into the bar scene. I mean, come on. Really?
yeah,
Like, are you? I mean, it was just like fascinating. They had this incredible like jazz music playing that was like kind of jazz, but it was kind of modern, and it was like it's just so cool. And all those characters that are in there, like they pan around that first when you first walk in there, and there's all these like crazy characters, and then the 2 droids walk through, and they're like, yeah, we don't serve your kind, and it's just like brilliant.
yeah.
It's like of all these characters, they don't you got to be like, organic in order to come into that bar. It doesn't matter what you are, just as long as you're organic,
Right.
It's like,
What if you had to pick your top 3 characters or characters that you relate to the most? What characters would be your top 3?
wow. And
Let's say,
let's see. I mean,
in the
I'm
middle
a Han
3.
Solo guy. I'm a Han Solo guy because I'm a Harrison Ford guy.
Okay.
Like growing up, like Harrison Ford was like, love that guy. Raiders of the Lost, the whole Raiders
Yeah.
of the Lost
Right.
Ark thing. Again, like he was in this movie called it was the sequel to Guns of Navarone. I don't know if you remember it, but it was called Force 10 from Navarone, and it was like this quirky little like
I think
post
that
World
I've
War
seen it, but a
II
long time
film.
ago.
Yeah, like they were on this mission where they had to go blow up this bridge, and it was like Robert Shaw was in it. a whole slew of people were in it, and Harrison Ford was in it, and so I was always a Harrison Ford fan, and so I mean I love the how pragmatic he is, and just like all of his one liners, and just
Right.
how he was like this, like all this mystical stuff that's going on with the Force, and trying to find your identity and trying to find yourself, and here's this guy, he's just like a gunslinger, which is why I kind of dug him. He's like kind of this cool guy that just didn't buy into any of that, which I definitely identified with. And then the other characters in there that I thought, as the characters went through, of course, everybody loves Yoda. Everybody loves the Zen master.
Yeah.
I always like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I liked all of his sayings were like obviously very Zen and very like thoughtful, and like, be patient and do this and don't do that and don't fall into this kind of guiding. Was never really a Luke fan. Luke was
Right.
always like a little whiny to me. Yeah, I don't know what it was. I want to go into Tossie Station and pick up some power converters. It's just like, like that whole thing, and like, it's like I can't go to the academy this year. He's just a little whiny, but that was his character. And
Yeah.
I get it. But he changed as it went on. Greedo, I was a huge. I don't know what it was. He had such a small little thing, but man, I had that figure, a little action figure as a kid, and I used to just stare at it. I just like, it's just so intriguing to me, So, obviously Boba Fett,
Right.
when they introduced him in Empire Strikes Back, it was definitely high on the list. Darth Vader. I mean, come on, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
I would say my number one would be Han Solo. I always loved his like struggle with, his character, who he is, which is this like, pirate.
Yeah.
And then this idea of like trying to belong and trying to find something that was higher than himself. And the fact that he always did the right thing, even though it was going against the grain of what he kind of was, what his character was. I always like that. I think I identify with that probably the most.
Well, that was one of the things too that I read. Like, you have Star Trek on one side, right? And no hate on Star Trek. I like Star Trek too. But Star Trek was like this idealistic world. Everything's free. It's like everything's provided. Whereas Star Wars is like, always to me felt a little bit more realistic of what stuff would probably be like in space. I mean, you're going to have these criminal organizations that are running rampant. You've got, different people that are smuggling goods. That's one of the things that I loved about Han Solo is he's a smuggler, man. Yeah, he's totally like a space pirate, and he's out there just running behind the lines. And, I love that scene. I love the fact that, you see him and he's like, I don't care, no cares in the world, but he's running from, Jabba the Hutt because he owes people money.
Yeah.
Which is, it doesn't matter how bad you are. If you owe some money, can't be too carefree about that,
And one thing that always bothered me, not to get too nerdy about this, but one thing that kind of bothered me.
I enjoy it.
As I mean, not that we're not already there.
Right.
But it's like one thing that always bothered me, like like in the 90s when they started re-releasing these movies, I felt like there was like they tried to redefine him, and there was this whole like debate, like did he shoot first, like did he just shoot Greedo, or did Greedo shoot first? And it's like, no, Han shot first.
Yeah.
Because that's who he is. That's his character. Don't try to like soften his character by being like, no, that was self-defense. It wasn't self-defense. It was self-defense in the sense that he knew that if he didn't shoot first, he was going to get killed. Yep. So it was like, I remember that was the whole thing. Like, did Han shoot first? Like, yeah, of course he did. And what was great, what I really loved about the film that came afterwards called Solo.
I enjoyed Solo. I enjoyed Solo.
Yeah, I did too. Totally did. Totally enjoyed that. Had a great time watching that. What I love about it is at the very end, he shoots first. He shoots Woody Harrelson's character first.
Yep.
And it's great because I'm like, without saying it, put the conversation to rest. Yeah. He shoots first. He always shoots first. That's his thing, man.
Of all the new stuff, they've had some hit and misses. I am not a fan of the newest trilogy. Not a big fan.
No.
But yet, they had some amazing films. Rogue One, so good. Rogue One was so good. And then what else was really good? The new Mandalorian series is phenomenal. And
I got a little into that Mandalorian last year, but I haven't gotten too deep into it. But I did like
season 2
the last,
ending.
yeah, I did like the last Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was
tell
good.
me why.
Yeah, I was into that. Um, I just liked it because it really kind of I like the fact that it kind of put an end to the Luke saga,
Yeah.
Darth Vader saga, and then launched it. You know, it wasn't really to the end of it that I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm into this. I'm into this. I also did. My wife convinced me to go see it. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to like. I don't like a lot of gimmicks with when I watch films. You know,
Yeah.
like I dig the sound. I'll do the 5.1, but you know, like I'm not into the 3D.
Yeah.
But I did go see it. I saw it in IMAX 3D,
Oh yeah.
and
Flying.
yeah, and I was just like, you know, I was really like hating on it. And she's like, "You got it? Have you ever seen anything in IMAX 3D?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm not into those gimmicks." You know, she's like, "Let's just go do it." And I was like, "All right." So we did it, and it was pretty amazing. It was.
Right.
I highly recommend it. The scenes, you know, the scenes with the ocean. I mean, you know, when they're out at that like crashed whatever it is, it's like crashed in the water or whatever that thing is at the end of the movie, and it's just amazing. Like the waves, the undulating waves was pretty awesome.
Right. I remember the first movie that I went to see, not on IMAX 3D, but like a true IMAX screen, like one of the real, you know, big boys.
Mm-hmm.
I was in LA, and it was for with the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, the one that he did that just kicked off.
Yeah.
The new trilogy that he did.
Yeah, which was pretty good.
I actually like that one, right? And I remember when I'm looking down here, and like normally your screen's out in front of you, but I'm looking down here, and then I see another spaceship interrupt there, and I was like, "Holy shit!" You know, it's like just because that would be kind of like if you're in a space battle, that's what it's going to be like. You know, you're going to have things coming at you from all sides, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. Now, I wanted to touch on something that you what were you going to say first of all? What were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just going to talk about the difference between the old films to the new ones. Like,
tell
kind of getting back to my purist thing.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the models. Like when you watch the CGI stuff, I get it, and it's come a long way from where it was like in the 90s when the first film came out, which I thought overused it too much and was terrible. But I'm a big fan of the 3D model making and the way that when it's shot on film and the light hits it, you can't really recreate that. I mean, you can, and they do. But to me, I love the 3D, like when the camera pans over the Millennium Falcon or over the Death Star or over any of the destroyers, you know, the way the shadow and the light hits that three-dimensional object in space and the camera picks it up was not able to be, to me, not really reproduced well at the time in the 90s with the CG stuff that they were really kind of heavily leaning on. That's it. That's
the drones.
That's my soapbox.
In episode 1 were just not scary in any way, shape, or form. You know, got the little weird head.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But that's where I think that they're. I think that, you know, with what's going on now with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they kind of understand the fans and they kind of understand what people liked from before, and they're kind of salvaging some of the good stuff. Like, I'm not giving anything away majorly, but like in The Mandalorian, in the Book of Boba Fett, like they pulled some elements from Naboo. So he had lost his spaceship, and they're getting him a new spaceship, and like they rebuild an old Naboo starfighter. But like it's essentially like, you know, Pimp My Ride. He gets it, and then they just like give it like absolute, make this car like on steroids. You know, it's like, but it's like, and when he's flying it, there's one scene where he's flying it, and you're like, oh, I finally think that's a cool vehicle. It's like, it's like, oh, I didn't like it in the beginning. Naboo was kind of stupid, but now it's awesome. You know, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'll have to dig in a little more to that.
So on Book of Boba Fett, 1 to 4 are kind of like, not so smooth. But then, God bless her heart, Bryce Dallas Howard took over on episode 5, and it's phenomenal.
Mm.
And it was so well
Okay.
received. Episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett was so well received that they're already talking about giving her her own movie. She is
Wow.
phenomenal, and she understands the
Great.
fans and how to shoot it. She did an episode as well in The Mandalorian, and she paid tribute in The Mandalorian to a lot of the scenes from her dad's Apollo 13. And so,
Cool.
and I love Ron Howard because I got to work with him. He's a
Yeah.
super cool guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
I love Ron Howard's films too. I mean, I've got a soft spot for those types of films. I don't know why they're just cool. They're just good, right?
I agree.
Yeah. They're just good.
Now,
they're just good.
Coming back to you, something you said with the sound design. I want to, because I do want to dive a little bit into the audio side. Now, when you go to craft, because this is something my wife, I remember going to the prequels, and one of the coolest things about the prequels, I didn't like the prequels as well, but there was a moment where the THX pops on the screen, and all of a sudden you can hear a TIE fighter go, all the way around behind you and then back out front. And that was just this, I was like, whoa, the sound just went behind me, because the theaters were just starting to get some of the nicer sound systems, because before that it had been like you had left and right. That was about it. You didn't have the five the 5 sources of sound.
Well, THX is a Lucasfilms thing, and Skywalker sound, which has always been a dream of mine. That was when I was younger. That was like a goal. I never got there, but when I was doing sound design, I always dreamed of working at Skywalker Sound. They'd kind of set the standard, starting back with Star Wars, of what film sound can be. I take that back. The first time, the first film that I ever remember going to, the movie where the sound made an impact on me, was like a part of the film more than just the dialogue and the music, was Midway.
Okay.
And I remember going and seeing Midway, and I remember the seats in the theater just rumbling when the bombs would be dropping, and it was just like, whoa, like this can be part of the experience. It doesn't have to be this like passive experience that the music's kind of just in the background with this dialogue. It can actually be this interactive kind of thing. And Star Wars really took that to the next level, and Lucas was always on the front, and the THX is his thing. And that is a standard that theaters have to meet, THX qualified theaters, in order to show his films. So, and if you wanted to show Empire Strikes Back, or if you wanted to show Star Wars or the new trilogy, you had, the folks from Dolby THX would come out, and they would certify the theater, and they do their thing where they set up the sound, and they make sure that it's right, and they make sure that the playback is right. And if you've ever seen behind the scenes on that, they come in and they bring these racks in and they lock these racks. Like, they set them and they lock them. Like, you can't touch them. Like, it's like, we've set these, we've tuned this room to be THX certified, So, that is something that's always been really intriguing to me. And it's a very high standard that has to be met in order to have that certification, and Dolby has to come out and do it. So, and to me, like when we would watch, I didn't know any of that as a kid, but those were the first films to me where the sound and the music were part of it. Like, the way that John Williams scored that was in a very traditional way, where each character had their own theme.
Yeah.
So anytime Princess Leia came on, it was Princess Leia's theme. And then, Luke would come on, it was like that, Jedi theme that later is called the Jedi theme, and it was him. And then, obviously Darth Vader, it had the dun, dun, dun. Everybody had each character kind of had their own piece of music that represented them. And even as a kid, you recognize that. You're like, here comes, Luke, and it's like this, like, kind of like thoughtful, exactly, and then there's like Princess, exactly, yeah, it's like this lonely, thoughtful, like, introspective sound. And then so I thought that was always really cool. And then what was great about that for me is that the whole thing became this immersive experience. And like I said, I'd seen tons of movies before, and there were some great ones that I saw, like Jaws. Jaws was that way, like the shark had a theme. Anytime the shark, you heard the that was like the thing. Even as as much as it was, and you never even saw the shark till the very end. So it was always just the music and the idea of the shark,
But you see,
which was always really
and that
intelligent.
music was terrifying. God knows, like if I was in a swimming pool as a child and someone busted out that, or even started humming, da 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 da, I'm like, get the hell out of the pool!
I know.
There's a shark in here.
I know.
That music was so much just ingrained into the psyche.
I know. And it became part. It was a character. It was a character in the film, and
yes.
So to me, like the movies like Star Wars were, even Jaws, as great as it was, and as much as a blockbuster as it wasn't until, I thought in my life, it wasn't until Star Wars where the sound was also part of the character, like these lasers and these sounds and the lightsaber and all of these things. It's like, what? Like
that sound,
like it's just amazing. I know, it's iconic.
Yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah,
and so they really took it to the next level with those films, and then, from that point forward, it was like a game changer. And so that was really something that when I was doing sound design, it was always, I just love, I really do miss that. I miss doing that. And I loved doing it when I did it, and it was great. It was so much fun. It was just so much fun.
People don't realize how much that when you go into creating a world, how much there is to that. With sound and colors and the cameras and lights, and CGI just has fleshed it out. But like to create a world, there's a photo, probably the movie series that I am least affectionate towards and really can't stand is probably the Twilight movie series. Not a fan. Didn't click for me. But there was a hilarious post on Instagram yesterday. Why? What happened? They took a shot from the image, from the screenshot from the movies, and someone had color corrected it back to the correct color for what it was shot at, right? So it was, someone had color corrected, removed the blue tones that are throughout that movie, and it was just like everyday light. And they were like, they're like, how funny it is that you remove those colors, and it just looked, and someone commented that it looked like a bunch of theater students practicing in the park to go do a Twilight reenactment on stage. And like, it was so accurate because just a color shift made that one more scary. You know what I mean? And when you add layers of sound, when you add layers of color, when you add layers, that there is this artistic level of manipulating our senses that allow us to kind of step back and into this different world, and the great filmmakers do it so effortlessly, or what we see as effortlessly, which maybe it's actually been an entire, it has been an entire thing. You look at something like, I thought Solo was super subtle. And Ron Howard, I would say he's extremely talented, but his universes that he jumps people into, it's subtle. It's very subtle. It could be this, but there's always it's just a degree removed from our world, if that makes sense. But it's still really believable. Versus some movies, Zack Snyder's, Superman type stuff. It's very different from our waking life, the colors and kind of the tones and such. But it's just interesting to see. And J.J. Abrams has his own style with all the lens flares and everything special.
Which he gets from Spielberg.
Yeah.
When I see J.J. Abrams, he's obviously a student of Spielberg. I mean, Spielberg was the master of the lens flare and the way that the light shooting in really dark scenes. That was always the thing with Spielberg, like his ability to shoot at night and his ability to shoot in really dark situations and create this really cool effect. And the lens flare is a big part of that. When you look at a lot of his films, they're all there. It's all there. Like in Close Encounters and Jaws, some of the night scenes when they're out on the boat and they're looking in the lens flare with the fog and everything. It's like, it's just, it's so there. It's like, what was the movie J.J. Abrams did where he overdid the lens flare? I think it was like Super 8. Was it Super
Yeah, I think it is
8?
Super 8.
Something like that. Yeah. I was like, okay, enough with the lens flare. I get it. You know, like, it's like way over the top.
Well, I
But
remember someone who
but
said,
that's the thing. Like,
go
those
ahead.
are the things that like always intrigue me about filmmaking, and that aren't always, you don't really know until you watch like a behind the scenes. But that's just the attention to detail and the subtleties of things that have to be there. Like, for instance, when you watch like the old Star Trek stuff, right? Everything is modern. Everything is, because its future is clean and modern and very, high tech. And what I loved about like when you watch like Star Wars, and anytime they show like the Rebel Alliance or they show their ships or the inside, they're kind of ragtag. They're kind
Yeah,
of like these broken down,
right.
things are exposed and they're like dirty. Like the X-wings always had like lots of like dirt on them and battle scars and everything on the Empire was like super clean.
Yeah,
Like the floors were always really shiny and long, and the halls were super shiny and clean, and everything was like very precise, and the stormtroopers marched and they were super shiny. Everything was like really dialed in. And then anytime that they showed like Han Solo, I mean, you look at shots of like, if you watch Star Wars and you just happen to watch the scenes where they're in the Millennium Falcon, and it's like if you look behind you, it's like a mess. It's like
yeah,
this like jalopy of a, it's like it's dirty and there's cables hanging down and it's like all messy and it's not quite, everything's like kind of like, even in the cockpit, it's kind of like ragtag, and
yeah,
I always loved that, like, when they would show the difference, like, obviously Han Solo is like this, like, pirate, and it's like a pirate ship, like that's his
yeah.
pirate ship. So it's kind of like, pieced together. It's not always working. They're always working on it. They're always fixing stuff. But like, even like the last scene where everybody's like getting into the X wings and the Y wings, and they're off to like fight the Death Star. It's like, it's like, that thing really gonna fly? Like, it's like so broken down looking. I love it
Right.
because it's like they are ragtag, and it's like they took the time to make it that way. They took the time to be like, this is like a group of people who don't really have like heavy funding, and they don't have all the resources available to them. So it's like, again, the underdog fighting the establishment, which has always been a good arc as well, story arc for me. But the attention to that detail I always thought was really something that, even as a kid, I was like, oh, I get this. This is cool. This is like, these guys are thoughtful. Like, this is deep.
Yeah.
This isn't just like watching Star Trek at the time. It was like definitely the next level of storytelling and character development, all of that stuff. So
And you go back to Hollywood's tradition of like, you go back to some of the old stuff, man. Like some of the set builds, on like Singing in the Rain, unreal, man. Like
yeah.
the stuff they were building, and you got to give them. It's just it's so amazing to look
Mm-hmm.
at how this world building. And I got to work on I got to work with Ron Howard on Angels and Demons, and when we were shooting on Sony's lot, which used to be Columbia Pictures, and we went into this one giant soundstage, and like on the wall they have a list of all the movies that were shot in that room.
Oh wow.
And I walked
Cool.
over there and I'm just reading these, and it's like it was like what was right at the top was Wizard of Oz. And if you looked
Yeah.
up,
I was gonna
like you
say.
could still see the different that they still had the pieces in place that they would suspend the flying monkeys from.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just this amazing to look at how all of the things that they built and what they had to put together to make that. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next studio over, I was standing there. One of my cool Tom Hanks stories. I was standing there looking at the wall, and on this wall was the right at the top was like right, not it's just on the list, not at the top, but is Joe versus the volcano. I was like, what? Joe versus the volcano was shot in here? And all of a sudden, from behind me, I heard Tom's voice go, yeah, that was a fun one to shoot. And I turned around, I was like, what? Hi, Tom. And he launches in on this cool story talking about how that the floors could be removed, and like the floors were actually removable in that, and they have these giant tanks under the ground, and those tanks
Mm-hmm.
they flooded them. And he talked about how he had been, he was on the suitcase for a couple days just floating there in these
Mm-hmm.
tanks. And was amazing, man. And you
Hmm.
don't think about it. You don't think about what goes into the world building for these movies, but it's insane, you know.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
now the level of digital world building that goes in. I've had a couple people come in that talk to me about the what is it called? Is it the Mirage? I can't remember, but it's this expanse. Like it's this 3D. Like it's essentially a screen that goes all the way around, so that they're not using green screens. They're actually have these LED screens that surround you. It's not
Hmm.
360. It's about 280 or something. It
Hmm.
surrounds people, and they just shoot on it. And as they turn, the background actually moves as well. It's amazing, man.
That's cool. That gives it a more of a three-dimensional, like an object in space kind
And
of
then they have
thing,
props
which
inside.
is
Yeah,
lacking. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
They ride the props and
Yeah.
move the props inside of it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, brother,
That's
this has
cool.
been a fun conversation. Now, I want to finish up and
Cool.
ask you this. If you were in the Star Wars universe, what would you do? What would you like to do if
What
you
would
were
I do?
in that world? Yeah, what would you do? What would
I
you
mean,
want to
dude,
do, man?
you know, I'd hang out with Han Solo.
Right?
I'd be a
Nice.
smuggler, man. Be a
That's
pirate.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
totally. Undeniable.
I would try to
Yeah.
be a Jedi, but I don't know.
Yeah. Eh,
I don't know. I like the Mandalorian series, but yeah, I still would try to be a Jedi. These are
yeah.
not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I love all that. I mean, I love all that, but I'm all
Smuggler's
about high
awesome.
adventure. Let's go do it. Let's get out
Right?
there in the world and see what
Han
happens. Yeah.
Solo does have the adventures. Jedis are too. I think that
Yeah.
the problems with the Jedi is they are just way too vanilla, man.
Well, the thing is they, as the story develops, they're either a recluse or they're deep in the politics of what's going on. I just I like the idea of somebody who's just out there winging it,
Oh,
gunslinging it.
it's
You
awesome.
know, yeah, it's just fun.
Shoot
I mean, his
first.
character's just a cool character. He's just a cool dude. Han Solo. I mean, Harrison Ford was like the perfect pick at the time for that.
Perfect.
Couldn't
There
think of
was
anyone else better.
someone else that was like in line for that role. That when I remember reading that, I can't remember who it is, but it was just like, oh, I can't. If anyone else had been cast as Han Solo, it wouldn't have worked. Wouldn't have worked.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Good.
No, that would be me. If I was in Star Wars, that would definitely be me.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thanks, brother. Well,
How
this has
about
been
you?
awesome.
What would you
For
be?
me,
Jedi?
okay, if I had to pick one, I mean, I'm sure I would love to be a Jedi, but you're right. It's kind of boring, man. I think if I was in the Star Wars universe, I mean, certainly I would want. I mean, I would love to learn the Force, to use the Force, but maybe not kind of with the Jedi or with the Sith, because both of them kind of are. They don't get it, you know. And so I
Hmm.
maybe I'd try to seek out a different group of Force users, because in the expanded universe there are other groups of Force users, and so
Hmm.
I think that might be
Hmm.
something interesting. And I'm excited to see if Star Wars starts playing with that as they go down and start
Yeah.
working with Grogu, which is such a cool little character, Baby Yoda.
Yeah. The thing is like I remember watching the press release when Lucas signed over the Star Wars franchise to Disney, and I was so heartbroken. It
You're
was
right.
like it was like watching, it was watching your childhood home be bulldozed to build a Walmart or something. Like that's how I felt. I was like, how can you do this? How can you do this? Come on, like you need more money. Give me give me a break. So, it was just really disappointing. But actually, I have to say that at Disney has been they've been a good they've been a good steward of the franchise. I think
Yeah,
for the most part they've been a good steward of the franchise. I think so.
yeah,
I like what they're doing, and I think they're keeping it as as true as they can.
yeah,
And expanding it as well.
yeah.
So with some of their things. But I have a pitch for Disney. I'll leave you
Oh,
with this.
all right.
I I think the next Star Wars line should be called Red Six Porkins, Red Six,
Oh, hell
and it
yeah.
should be the story of Porkins. And I think it's this like kind
Hell
of
yeah.
lovable. He's this like lovable loser who joins the Rebel Alliance on a drunken dare, only to become like an integral part in the fight against the Empire. I think that would be
That'd be
I think
awesome.
that would be hilarious. That would be
Yeah.
hilarious.
Well, there was like there's these different things. I got to give Disney credit. They're like looking to expand into different areas and arenas. Like so, even with the Avengers, I heard that they're looking at testing the grounds to do no jokes, like to testing the grounds to do an Avengers musical.
Oh,
Like how I
okay.
don't know, but like they're looking at playing around with other concepts. So bringing in comedy, bringing in you
Well,
never know.
we all remember the 1977 Star Wars
Christmas,
Christmas special.
Star Wars Christmas
Oof,
special. That was
that was
rough.
brutal.
That was rough.
Brutal. Bad idea. Yeah, that was heartbreaking. I remember watching that as a kid and feeling uncomfortable watching it. Even as a kid, I was like, this this isn't working.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
be careful. Be careful. Yeah.
Right. You never know,
Uh,
man. Well, that's awesome. Well, brother, I
yeah.
want to appreciate your time coming on and discussing all
Yeah,
things.
absolutely.
My 100th
Absolutely.
episode, I figured I had to do something a little bit different and have some fun conversation on today. So it's awesome, man.
Awesome. Cool. Well,
All
thanks
right.
again. May the
I'm going
force
to
be
end.
with you.
May the force be with you.